Hey y'all, welcome to the channel. I'm at Task Force Bourbon, and today I'm going to be reviewing Russell Reserve 13-year-old. I'm going to be talking about, since the last had it, whether or not it's still deserves the hype, and if my notes still hold up to how I tasted it back in August. I've obviously had a little bit more since August, but I don't really recall necessarily if those notes are still true. So let's go ahead and find out. Before I do, I'll just rehash a little bit of the background of Russell Reserve, and that's going to be really quick because really there's not a lot marketing-wise that was published about Russell's Reserve 13. So other than that, it's a 13-year-old bourbon, bottled at barrel proof, and it comes in close heel behind Russell Reserve 16-year, and then you got, of course, from Wild Turkey, as this is from Wild Turkey, Master's Keep 17-year bottled and bond is part of that Master's Keep series. So for them, sort of a higher age stated bourbon, but as far as an older bourbon is concerned, I start really considering that to moniker to be applied to 18-year-old bourbons. With that, in terms of theming, like I said, there's no really gimmick here. It's just an extra age barrel proof, non-chill filtered Russell's Reserve crafted by Eddie Russell, seemingly for the sake of what he said, quote, because it would taste good. So that's good for me. If Eddie Russell, Jimmy Russell say it's good, it's probably good. Now, Eddie does go on to say that, quote, crafting Russell Reserve 13-year-old turned out to be one of my most rewarding experiences as a distiller. This release embodies our commitment to creating uniquely satisfying flavors, and hands down is one of our most rare bourbons. Well, that part's definitely true. So it came out originally about $70 MSRP. I've seen it upwards on secondary sites online for upwards of $700. You'll commonly see it around $450, $500 on the secondary market now. I don't necessarily condone paying those prices for really any bourbon, including what I have listed here as my number one bourbon of the year. But with that said, if anything is worth the money, I definitely would put Russell Reserve 13-year-old up there. So we'll go ahead and find out where that fits in. Let me go ahead and get a quick pour back. Still has a nice little pop to the cork. Get a nice healthy pour there, because we're going to spend some time with it today. So on the nose, which I'm starting to already recall, you're getting some of those brown sugars. It got a lot of those dark flavors, brown sugars, vanillas, almost like a creme brulee right on the nose. It's you can tell this is going to be a rich pour. And look how, I don't know if you can tell, I know I got like a really bad backward facing camera here, but you can probably see a little bit. Let me get a good swirl. Maybe you see how oily that is right along the lines. You can see the lines right there, it's just sticking to the glass, so it's nice and thick. Wow. So instantly, it deserves its number one spot right away, hands down. This is fantastic. Super rich, but like in I think I used the word fudge in one of my last reviews, but you get that almost like you get that richness that you get in a nice awesome fudge. There is some chocolate there. They're more of like a milk chocolate flavor, but it's rich like a fudge. You do get those brown sugars that you got on the nose. Not a lot of vanilla. You get some of the classic caramel in there right on the open. But man, it's like this super rich meets oak. Oak heavy, not oak spicy, but definitely oak forward in the sense that that's probably the most predominant way that it's balancing out here. The predominant spice notes. So that oak, that's carrying through. So you can tell just a touch at the start of the mid that there's a little age to the oak. Again, I don't think 13 years is a super long time in the barrel. It's definitely a long time. No doubt anything over 10 years is probably starting to starting to sit in that barrel a while, maybe costing the distiller some money as it just sits there. But 13 still not very old, where you would expect those old oak flavors like you would see on like a Pappy 20 or 23. And I think that's where the line where it starts to break down. You got the almost that like toasted or earthy wet oak kind of flavors you get on like the Pappy 20. Almost like you can picture that barrel, the structural integrity of that barrel is just starting to break down, almost like it's turning into mush and kind of feeding back into it. And that kind of sounds kind of gross, but scientifically speaking, at some point that's going to happen. As the liquid just sits there, against the wood, it's going to start kind of bringing in some of that flavor, and that's that earthy, almost like a cardboard. And again, those sounds kind of gross, but they're good. They taste great. And every once in a while, on a younger as compared to a 20 year or plus, you get some of those same notes. And just at the top of the mid, you can taste a little bit of that aged oak in there, and it's really good. So while none of those original rich flavors like the brown sugar and that chocolate go away, you do also get flashes of, and my notes are staying true. I got them kind of pulled up and I'm looking at them and seeing if they're still there. The slight apple flavors and dark berry notes that I wrote about before, they're still there. And that's why I think that I rated it so high, that I rated it, it's number one bourbon of the year. I get the complexity that it has, and what I'll say is I'll jump forward real quick, and I rated this a 4.5 out of a 5.0, which is wild because some of the other on my list that are not number one spot actually got a 5.0 rating scale, and the way that I compare those ratings to at the higher end of the echelon anyways is if you look at a 5.0, consider it to be like, if you compare it to music, like a Beethoven piece of art. Like, this is fantastic, it's well crafted, it's got so much art and talent poured into that piece of music, but it's still not one most of us are probably putting on our iPods, working out to, running our marathons to. If you do, cool, great, grand, wonderful. But for me, when you go down to 4.5s, again, you're sticking with that comparison to music. The 4.5s are the ones I got on repeat. Like, man, you sure you're not tired of that song? No, I'm not. This one literally excites me. So when I spoke earlier about 4s being the first I recommend to, that 4.5s are ones that I literally excite me. Now, there might be something here that's crazy. And the way that this is crazy that doesn't quite make that well-crafted like a 5 is in the sense that maybe there is a touch, not too much going on necessarily, but maybe a touch too much going on. And that the complexities, maybe it's just like almost impossible to balance or something to that effect where you're just like, you know what, it's not just perfect, but it's perfect in the sense that it's complex as hell. It's really tasty. The proof is there. The non-chill filtered. It's got a good age statement on it from a reputable distillery. So fantastic. So for me, that's why I gave it a 4.5. And I kind of digressed here, but let me get back to tasting this fantastic bourbon. Okay, so I also wrote powdered sugar, and I see where I'm seeing that. So it's a transition from the mid to the finish. I can almost feel like a powdered sugar on my tongue. Like it's very light and fluffy, not sugar sweet like you'd find in like a sweet tea or like you'd find in straight up raw sugar. But you get this very confectioner's kind of powdered sugar kind of deal going on, just a touch, not like a whole cup of it in there, and you're now like in a sweet bourbon. This is not sweet. It's rich, and it's oak forward. Like right now, this finish and this tail is it's sitting right here. The whole time I've been drinking the bourbon, it's just sitting right here, like right behind the Adam's apple, maybe a bit lower than that, and it's just definitely a high in proof, but in a good way. That finishes, man, it just finishes on oak. So this is where I think maybe I'm a little bit different here than my original write-up. So I did say the finish balanced out some more, but the char is still very prominent and lingers long. So the finish just does balance out. But my original notes were that it finishes char heavy, almost like in a spicy way. I think I can recall remembering, that's where I was mentally with it. But that aged oak I spoke of before, I think if you were sitting there, after it leaves your mouth, if you're sitting there kind of rolling your tongue around your mouth, you can get that aged piece to it, which is kind of impressive, I think, for a 13-year-old to have that aged bit there. And what I will say, though, if you haven't gone on a limb, Russell Reserve 13 is definitely one I recommend, definitely one you should pick up. But unfortunately, I hate to say it, your chances of probably finding this on the shelf is pretty slim. If you do, great. If you find two, I'll send you my address. Send me another one. But otherwise, I definitely recommend this bottle. And I would say to really appreciate this, if you haven't already, much like Russell Reserve 13 now is, the Pappy line of 2023, anything over 20 years, you can find them at most of your bars, higher end or bourbon bars. It might cost you a little bit. I don't want you to go out and pay more than you need to. But if you got the means, go ahead and sample it. And that way you have this frame of reference where you can, lean back on and be able to piece out what I'm talking about here and be able to find those notes. And it wasn't, for this place in Baltimore, State Fair. So shout out to you guys, Evan Brown, who really hooked me up, giving me the chance to try, a whole lineup there for literally nothing. So if you get the chance, Whiskey Wednesday for them, they do half price, whiskeys and bourbons. This is non-paid endorsement. I'm just, super fan of Evan Brown and his guys over there. So, but you can go out there or, to your local spot and try some of these higher end bourbons before you buy. And if they have Russell Reserve 13, give it a shot and then, pay whatever you feel like you want to pay for. It's all relative to your own means. But I definitely think this is worth the hype. It's obviously worth my hype. Fred Minnick rated it his number one bourbon of the year. It wasn't mentioned at all in Whiskey Advocate's top bourbons of 2021, or whiskeys rather. I got to say I wholeheartedly disagree with that. And I've tried, I think, all but maybe one of the bourbons on that list. And I actually like quite a bit all those bourbons. And the ones I was most surprised with, I'm looking over off screen here, I got Wheelhouse Bourbon. And that was, it was on the bottom. It was like maybe 19, 18, 19, 17, 18, 19, whatever it was. And it's only a 2-year straight bourbon. And wow, it does not taste like that. It is an impressive bourbon that deserves to be on that list. Wow, and I won't bash what I don't have to. There are ones that were on there that just don't really deserve that spot, especially when you got stuff like this sitting around, came out 2021, that are phenomenal pours. So no excuse. But let's go ahead and see if we get anything last minute here. Oh, and what I will say is another side note here is, during my research, I learned that this is supposedly or rumored, or maybe it's actually official. I don't know yet. So if you know, fill me in. But it's supposed to be an annual release. So initially, when it came out, I think it was like around June timeframe. It was rumored to be, or suspected to be, or at least I was tracking it. It was supposed to be a kind of a one-off. But this new rumor that I'm hearing around, that's good news. I hope they keep up the good work at Wild Turkey. Yeah. And see, that's what I'm talking about. It starts out really rich. In the mid, you just get this blast of weirdness. And in a good way. You got the oak, the aged oak bit coming in. You got the splash of, just brief, like little pop, pop, pop. Like you never seen those, like imagine a black screen. And you got like a little firework, pop pink and pop blue and pop brown or orange and pop purple, whatever. You get those little pops of like this weird, complex flavors that are going on. And then you go into the finish, which balances out, and you still got all the openings, things we loved. And you get that aged oak just flash just to leave you with. And it's still just sitting on the tongue. Full bodied, of course. Yeah. This is fantastic. I'm going to end up drinking all of this for sure. I'm trying to pace myself here, but oxidation will eventually set in. Or start to get like a serious threat at least. It's already technically setting in. That's probably why it tastes maybe a little bit different at about half full. But when you get to about quarter full, you get all that air in there. It's going to have an effect on the bourbon, good, bad, or indifferent. So at about quarter to, I try to do bottle, basically get rid of them, bottle kills. I recommend you do the same. I recommend you drink your bourbon, unlike some that'll keep it on the shelf. So for Russell Reserve 13, again, highly recommend it. I'll take some Q&A if anybody's got anybody's still on. I see Jay Michaela, you had me at chocolate. Chocolate's always a good thing, especially when paired with bourbon. So, I used to be really back into wines. I lived in Italy for a few years. And you got wines and cheese that obviously go really, really well together. But with bourbon, it's not really, for me at least, I don't find that it's like wine. It has to be this wine with this cheese goes, this, that pairing is really what's up. With bourbon, I find that this bourbon goes well with any chocolate for the most part. Obviously, you've got your own personal preferences, but I find that bourbon and chocolate, great pairing. So, do yourself a favor, try that out. On your last sip, maybe take a little chaser with the chocolate and follow it with the bourbon or backwards, whatever, however you want to do it, and you won't be let down. All right, if that's all, then guys, cheers. It was fun, and I'll do it again soon.